All right, hello everyone, it's Sasha. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Welcome to the retreat. Yes, we can feel your excitement. Hopefully, you can feel ours too. We have a big party this year. We have to say this year, a lot of those guys up there really wanted to join. So our advice is just to relax with whatever might be manifesting. And this is all because as the energy starts accelerating, things move to the surface. Simply, your original state of consciousness
皆さんの本来の元々ある意識というのは
is as just one consciousness.
一つの意識、一なる意識です。
We represent it with this eye
この
here.
目でそれを象徴しています。
So there's really only one consciousness,
ですから意識は一つしかないんですね。
no separation whatsoever.
本来は分離はなかった。
But that state of oneness,
でもそのワンネス、一なる状態というのは
because there's no duality,
二元性がありません。
it's at rest.
そして休息した状態です。
And therefore, at rest, there's not much to do, yes?
で休息をしているわけですからあまりやることがないんですね。
It's only when you have duality that energy begins to move.
二元性があるときに初めてエネルギーが動き始めます。
So much like when you have a battery in one of your recorders,
例えばレコーダーの中の電池、バッテリーだと思ってくだ
it
さい。
has a positive end and a negative end.
プラスの極とマイナスの極がありますね。
Those two opposite charges are what create the energy source.
この2つの極性がエネルギーの源となるわけです。
So when the one consciousness separated,
で、この一なる意識が分離して、
it created, in a sense, opposite charges
で、全く相反するチャージを作り出します。
that began the process of separation,
そこから分離のプロセスが始まります。
fueled by the conflict between those two opposite charges.
で、その真逆のそのチャージを持つ者の間に葛藤や対立が生まれるんです。
So you had then fragmentation.
で、断片化がどんどん生まれて、
Now, it's important to understand that when we say this about fragmentation, the mind thinks of the fragmentation as being something out there.
でここで、理解してほしいのは、人間のマインドが断片化というと外側で起きているものと捉えがちだという点です。
The one
これが1ですね。
creates a realm of separation
で
within
その
itself,
一なる意識が自分の中に分離を生み出します。
fragments.
断片化する部分ですね。
Eventually, the fragments are the individual souls.
でそれはいずれ個々の魂となっていきます。
But look at the way we've drawn it here.
でもここで描いた図を見てください。
The one is still existing
で1になるものはまだここに存在します。
because it's your natural state.
それが本来の皆さんの状態だからです。
Therefore, the fragmentation is an inner one, not an external one.
だから、その断片化している部分っていうのは自分その、内面にあるわけですね。外にあるわけじゃなくて内包されているわけです。
So no matter how far so to speak, you think you've separated from the source,
だからソース、源からどこまでもこう離れた分離した状態に自分がなったと思ったとしても、
it literally is an illusion.
文字通りそれは幻想と言えるわけです。
You are never, ever separate.
決して分離することはないからです。
Okay, so here we have a human,
ここに人間がいます。
and the human, the consciousness of the human is really experiencing something, sorry for the pun, alien to itself.
人間の意識は自分にとって異質なものを体験します。
Because the natural state is not separation.
本来の状態というのは分離はないんですね。
And therefore, it's kind of hard for a human to stay separated.
だから人間として分離した状態を維持することは難しいです。
So, there's a mechanism that keeps the human separated.
で、人間が分離した状態を維持するためのメカニズムがここにあります。
The mechanism is the ego,
それはエゴというメカニズムです。
the individual identity.
個々のアイデンティティがあります。
That keeps the human rooted and grounded in separation,
それが人間を第一に根ざし、そして分離した状態を維持させるということです。
so it can experience what it's like to be separated.
個々の存在として体験することが、さまざまなものを体験することが可能になるわけです。
Okay, so this human then is hanging around on the earth plane.
で、この人間は地球というね惑星で、生きています。
The human does not know about its true nature.
そして本質を全く知らない状態でいます。
And the human looks out at the stars.
で、人間が星を見上げます。
And the human longs to connect with the stars.
そして星とつながりたいと望みます。
The human doesn't realize those stars, those beings out there are reflections of him or herself.
でもそこでその人間が気がつかないのは、その星やそこにいる存在たちは自分の反映である、映し鏡であるということ、そこに気がついていません。
There's no separation.
分離はないということです。
So if the human then is saying, oh, please, spaceship, please land in my backyard.
で、人間は言います。どうぞ宇宙船を私の裏庭に降りてください、着陸してくださいと。
How many have done that, yes?
たくさんの人がそう望むと思います。
The human is still interacting with the universe as if other parts of the universe are separate from them.
宇宙が自分たちとは分離しているものというふうに見なして宇宙とつながろうと人間はするわけです。
And therefore, ET contact can be somewhat frustrating.
なので ET コンタクトというのがフラストレーションがたまる要因となります。
You're sitting in your beach chair,
例えばビーチチェアに座っていて
calling them.
相手を呼びます。
Maybe sometimes you see something, maybe sometimes you don't.
で、見える場合もあるし見えない場合もあります。
That's like first level contact work.
それが最初のコンタクトワークの段階と言えます。
But as you go deeper into the contact work,
でもコンタクトワークがどんどん深まっていくと
you stop looking out there
外を見ることをやらなくなります。
and you go inside.
そして自分の内側に入っていくんです。
So when you go inside then,
で、自分の内側に入っていくと
you kind of have to look at that ego, yes?
エゴを見ざるを得なくなります。
Is the ego helping the contact process or is it hindering the contact
エゴ
process?
がコンタクトのプロセスを助けているのか、もしくは邪魔しているのかというところを見ることになります。
And the ego kind of carries around all of the old unhealed things.
で、エゴというのは古い癒されてないものをずっと持ち続けています。
So sometimes humans get stuck there.
だから人間はそこに滞ってしまうことがあるんです。
But for many of you, we've been doing this work with you for many years.
皆さんの多くはこういったワークを何年間もずっとやっています。
And through those many years, we've been guiding you to go beyond this human level.
で、その何年ものワークの中で、この人間のレベルを超越するということをやってきました。
The human level of separation.
つまり、人間のレベルにおける分離の意識を超越するということです。
So in the last few years, we've begun drawing this map.
で、そして去年ですね、このマップを私たちは書きました。
We call it a quantum map
それをクォンタムマップ、量子の地図というふうに私たちは呼んでいます。
because it's representing, in a sense, the pathway
それは道筋を象徴するんです。
from the human level back to the one.
人間のレベルから一なる意識へと戻るための道筋です。
And how contact work can help facilitate that process.
で、コンタクトワークがそのプロセスをどのように促すかということを示しています。
Ever wonder if there's intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? Well, I have. I've been wondering since I was a kid. My name is Reuben Langdon, and on March 29th, 2007, in the middle of the day, I saw a number of strange objects in the sky. Coincidentally, I was working on the film Avatar at the time, playing an alien. And ever since then, I've been on a quest to find out if aliens really do exist, and if so, are they here with us? If beings of higher intelligence are here, what is their purpose? Why don't they make themselves more known? Why the secrecy? I've asked these questions to many experts, yet each seems to have a different theory. So I thought to myself, why not ask the aliens directly? So that's what I set out to do. Well, sort of. All right, finally, we're here.
Yes,
All right. And we're in Japan.
we're in Japan. Can you believe it?
This is very cool.
I know.
So we talked about this last year
Yes,
during the first interview.
yes.
And just experienced your contact event.
Yes.
So cool.
Did you have fun?
I had a lot of fun.
Great.
It was very cool. And I've had, several months to digest our last sitting, and from that experience and also the worldly things that have been going on, formulated a bunch of questions that I wanted to sort of do a quick follow-up.
Okay.
And a lot of them actually were answered during this event,
Oh,
which was cool.
that's interesting. Synchronicity?
Synchronicities. So, and maybe I'll just go a little more in depth in some of those. But yeah, I guess if you want to just jump on into it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Give you your time, what you need.
All right. Hello, it's Sasha again.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks.
Wonderful to see you.
Yes, thanks for this weekend.
You're very welcome.
I
Quite a
had
show this weekend.
Quite a
yes?
show, yes. Well, and I guess it's just maybe the timing of the energies with the solstice, and like you were saying before, what's sort of needed on the planet right now.
Yes.
And it's very cool to sort of have these synchronicities with my own meditations and journeys and work, and see the crossovers and overlapping. It's just all confirmation and a lot of fun.
Yes.
So I have, sort of from our last discussion, a lot of questions arose during the editing and the process and release. And I wanted just to sort of do a little quick follow-up today. I know before we talked about the Pleiadian history a little bit and where they came from, but I guess a big question on my mind, the Pleiadian DNA in the humans.
Yes.
I know we all share the same DNA. And then today I got a bit of information, which was the first time for me hearing you said earlier, or at the closing, that there's the Lyra Lyran energy mixed in with the Pleiadian energy, and I know humans also have the Lyran, Lyran, is it Lyran or Lyran?
Doesn't matter, yes.
Backgrounds and energies, and I'm guessing, is that pre-Atlantis states, or that's,
yes.
that's where it, and that's where it sort of spread out. I was wondering if you could just go into detail a little bit about the DNA lineage, and then the reasons for Pleiadians coming in the way that you guys are coming here now, and helping with our, our quote unquote ascension.
Yes.
I know that word is not really the way it is, but that's sort of what we're using during this time.
Yes. Well, of course, as with all galactic history, it's a long story.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will attempt to summarize.
Yes.
As you know, much of the information that we've given in the past having to do with the Lyrans is that they are some of your oldest forefathers. And from the point of view of Lyran history, there was a split, which is very common, a split in their lineage. So you could say that one group continued on the trajectory of their evolution, and they became a lot of these very ancient civilizations like Polaris, Big Dipper, Cygnus, places like that. But there was another group that split off, and they wandered around for a while, but they eventually found their way to the Earth solar system. This would have been in very ancient times, so man was primitive at that time. It would have been what you call the in-between period of Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon. There's kind of an overlap there.
Okay.
And at that time, this group of Lyrans, they colonized Earth, and a lot of those colonies were in what is now considered to be Northern Europe.
Okay.
And these Lyrans lived on Earth for a very long time, many generations. But as they were flourishing here, they were aware that obviously Earth was not their home planet, and the gravitational field was different, the oxygen content was different, things like that. And so they took some DNA from some of primitive man at that time, purely to kind of tweak themselves to adapt to some of these Earth conditions in a better way.
Okay.
Okay. So over time then, that Earth DNA, the very primitive Earth DNA, became part of their identity. Now, also if you have an external civilization that comes and colonizes a planet, over many generations, really the frequency of the planet does help to change their DNA too.
Okay.
Okay, so you're having several influences there.
Right.
All right, so many generations, many generations are passing, and at this point it was fairly peaceful. These, at this point, Earth Lyrans, we've called them, were living here peacefully on the Earth, but at one point, let's say the conflicts from outside your solar system began coming to Earth.
Okay.
So this is when you might say competing groups came.
Would this be the Anunnaki?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
In the broad sense, the Anunnaki were those offspring from some of the royal races, if you will, or
Okay.
the progenitor races, originally from Lyra and also from Vega, but then became other species. So there were a lot of those kind of, we don't want to say battles, that's a little bit more dramatic, more like political situations.
Sure.
It became very uncomfortable for those Earth Lyrans to live on Earth. So, regrettably, they chose to leave.
I see.
And this is when they went toward the constellation that you know of now as Pleiades. So we have said many times
see.
that we're not from the 7 stars,
Right.
Pleiades, but in the direction of the Pleiades. But when ancient man would ask us where we were from,
I
we
see.
would point toward the Pleiades.
I see.
So that's how my particular lineage of Pleiadians has Earth DNA, ancient Earth DNA.
the urge or the wanting to help the humans ascend or go
Yes.
at this point? What is
Yes.
the drive, or is there karma involved?
Well, going back to that time period then when the Earth Lyrans were here, they formed a bond with early man. Now, not the same kind of bond as if they were more in a more advanced species, but basically there was a sense of protection, a sense of love, and a sense of potential for who these early humans could become.
I see.
Now, throughout time, there have been other ET groups here visiting, taking some DNA, we have to say, and leaving. Not so much at this point settling. So these Earth Lyrans were really the first ones.
I see.
So because of that bond, when they had to leave the planet, it was surprising to them that it was very heart-rendering for them. They did not want to leave. And so they made a promise to themselves and to the collective consciousness of ancient man, let's say, that they would always watch out for them.
I see.
So that's really where it comes from.
And does this go back to the days where humans would think sort of the Greek gods and make the mythology
Exactly.
of the gods in the sky?
Yes.
Are those gods then Pleiadian, I guess, based in the majority of?
Lyran.
Lyran, okay.
There are two royal houses, let's say. One, and again, these are our labels.
Sure.
So for maybe if someone else has another source of information, the labels are different, but the basic idea is the same. Two royal houses, one from Lyra, and one, we say, from Sirius, though it is Vega lineage.
Okay.
Okay? So those two royal houses tended to be in conflict with each other.
But they're sort of the same.
Well, they come from the same source.
Same source, yeah.
Yes. So do you on your planet, and you still conflict with each other, yes.
This is true, yeah. Is that conflict now? Because that was so ancient. Is that
Long gone.
Long gone.
Long
okay.
gone.
So they sorted that out.
Yes. However, you know that you were asking the question about karma, and we'd like to answer that question from the point of view of dropping a stone in a pond and you see the ripples. All right, so even though the consciousness of those original beings has long ascended, however, the impact of their struggles and their karma, so to speak, has rippled through time. So if you look at your planet now, you have still kind of an idea of royal houses or different factions that are still kind of playing out those territorial disputes.
I see. In a energetic way.
In an energetic
that
way,
manifests itself in.
but it manifests through the systems on your planet.
Sure.
So it's not like, there are overlords. We know that some stories that are told, manipulating the chess pieces on the board. These are very old echoes of old dynamics that are still playing out in the ripple through the hologram, so to speak. And they're working their way out on Earth at this time.
So I sort of have a new base of understanding of reality with energies and archetypes. Would this be like an archetypal energy?
Yes.
Going to its source?
Yes.
It's this.
As the archetypes play out on Earth, you're going to you can see some very direct connections with this. The royal house of Lyra, very often on your world, was depicted as lion.
Yes.
So royal families, yes. The royal houses of Sirius, which is Vega lineage, very often depicted as serpent. So dragon in the east, snake in the west. And the royal families of what was once, you could say Pleiadian, is usually a bird, whether it's eagle or condor, things like that.
And that's where we get our mythologies from the sky and the astrologies and everything else.
Yes,
It all goes
and the
back to
whole idea
archetypes.
of the giants, those were usually Lyran species.
Oh, okay.
They tended to be very much larger.
I see. Are there any remnants of that Lyran, the original Lyran species left now?
When you say remnants, do you mean skeletons? Or
Well,
because that's a whole other thing we'd like to say.
yeah, I was maybe that's where all these giant skeletons are.
Okay, yes.
But I was actually thinking of, does it still exist somewhere in the cosmos?
Which race?
The Lyran, the old Lyran race that came to, that was the beginning of the Pleiadians.
Yes, they exist, but very different now.
Okay.
And of course younger, because the originals already ascended.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
We want to insert something here.
Sure.
Because it's connecting to something you asked about earlier. About the Lyran connection. You know, for example, there were little bodies, little skeletons found in South America.
Recently, yes.
And there were DNA tests.
Yes, still ongoing, I believe.
Okay, and at least what was released publicly is saying there's nothing showing it's not human, or something like that.
Oh, okay. This is from the couple years ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Couple years ago.
Yeah. I actually know the geneticist who did the analogy. Yes.
Okay. Well, this goes back to what we were talking about with you before. Everyone is connected to Lyra. So it is going to seem like they're not alien.
I see.
They're you.
Sure.
In another form.
I see. Yeah, that was. There was a lot of junk DNA that the genesis was going through. But after the movie Sirius, which was sort of highlighting that that experiment, came out, at the end they didn't have the full DNA test hadn't been done. But I saw him several months later, and he told me in a private meeting that what he could find it was human. So far, he couldn't tell any difference. So.
Yes. Of course he would find that.
Yeah. I've interviewed some other people who make claims that they're hybrid, for example, mantis human hybrids, and everybody out there in the UFO community says, well, go get a DNA test, go get it. And they're all saying, well, it's probably going to be nothing different, you know. What are we going to find different?
There might be from time to time genetic anomalies you will find.
Right.
But as we were talking in the workshop a few hours ago about this idea of the DNA on the light level, and that's where DNA is sourced. If you have, so to speak, a dead body, you don't have the capacity to test the light DNA. It's a shell.
Right.
So you're basically testing the DNA of the shell. If you had a live body, and well, it wouldn't be a body if it was alive, would it?
Right.
But if you had the live being, and you had the capacity to test DNA beyond what your capacity is now, then you would see variations.
I see.
But again, not huge variations.
Sure. Interesting. Well, I guess, yeah, we're all made from stardust.
Exactly.
So I guess it all comes back to that. Would the Pleiadians, do they have a symbol that they use to sort of, in the Galactic Federation of sorts, like a patch or an insignia that they put on their ships?
Didn't we say before it's not like Star Trek?
Yes.
We understand the spirit of your question.
Sure.
For the Pleiadian races, much like what we just said a couple minutes ago, we resonate with avian.
Oh, okay.
So
winged, okay.
Winged beings.
I see.
Yes.
Or even symbols of wings or that kind of thing? Okay.
Yes. Or flight. So we would say there's not just one symbol, because there's not just one of our,
Pleiadian, right?
There's many groups. But that's a common flavor.
I see. And is there a specific design of ships that you prefer, more rounded or cigar shaped, or?
Actually, a lot of the time it depends on the era of Pleiadian.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we talked to you a little bit before last time about the Billy Maya contacts and the Semyasi era, which was the typical sports model, yes?
Right.
And
that for you guys was ancient times.
It's ancient technology, but we often can take that shape as a message to the viewer,
Okay.
if needed.
I see.
Generally, at this point, though, there's a lot of plasma ships going on.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because plasmic energy can move through the quantum much easier.
And plasma then would change form all the time,
It
right?
can change form
more of a,
and
more
color.
Organic, more of
More
orga-
organic,
than
yes.
and less metallic. than
Yes.
this. Okay.
Yes.
So when we see these plasmic-looking orbs that, we call them orbs, but they're actually like pulsating light, then these are actual ships.
It can be. It depends
Okay.
on the situation.
Okay.
But yes.
And they can take on a more of a hard physical form at
Yes.
some point?
When you see them in the plasmic state, it is the state between states, let's say.
Okay.
So it's the state between hyperdimensional travel and physicality. And usually we hang out in that state often,
Okay.
but take on the physicality if needed.
Okay. There's a lot of craziness going on the planet right now with the energies
Really?
and things like that.
We hadn't
You hadn't
noticed.
noticed. A lot of polarity, which I'm assuming, based on this weekend's conversation, out of polarity, once you can sort of find that balancing point, comes the evolution, comes the alchemy.
Yes.
Which was very informative and spot on. For
Paradox
the times.
in the middle, yes.
The paradox in the
Yes,
middle.
Yes.
But also it was said, I think earlier this year, you guys said that because of all of the chaos, that contact right now is like lighting a fire, or it's like kindling in a fire situation, and that there would be, I guess maybe in groups like this it's okay, but in a larger global sense, everybody's looking for that disclosure moment.
Yes.
Where are we at energy-wise? Are we still in that kindling?
Yes, but there's also still, there's kind of two camps, as you well know. There's the camp that understands that the awareness about your connection to the universe is going to come from the grassroots level. And it's going to come through a shift in consciousness. And it's going to come from the groups like you've had this weekend
Sure.
that are doing the work. They're doing the grunt work, really.
Yeah.
And then there's the camp that thinks that the release of the papers and the proof and all of that
Right.
is what's going to shift it, but that can never shift consciousness.
Sure.
It's not that it's a negative thing,
Yeah.
but as you well know, secrets are kept compartmentalized on your world. At this point, mirroring the level of consciousness on your world, you're only going to get compartmentalized revelations.
Yeah. That was my revelation with the production of the Citizen Herring.
Yes.
And my involvement in that, which was great, and it's had its library of information for people to access.
Yes, it
But,
is. It's still raising consciousness. It's still raising awareness, but it alone will not do it.
Exactly, and that's when I started shifting into this kind of work. where
yes.
I think
This
would
is
have-
more your style, my dear.
This has more benefits. So what do we have to look forward to, I guess, in the sense of just sticking to the grassroots, sticking to the energy, creating the wormholes and the energy and the vibration
Yes.
for this to happen?
Yes. The type of energy and experience that you had this weekend is really more of what you're going to see, and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Okay,
But again, still small pockets.
I see.
However, those of you in those small pockets take the energy outward, and then it seeds more readily.
So less lights in the sky and more lights in our dreams?
Well, not less lights in the skies,
Okay.
less emphasis
Okay,
on the lights in the sky.
I see.
As you saw this weekend, the work you did was not focused on looking for the lights in
Sure.
the sky, but in the end you had some tangible proof, if you wish to
Sure,
say that.
I see.
But it wasn't the focus.
Right.
So less attachment to the lights in the sky, maybe still enjoying it,
Sure.
but the necessity, and it is an absolute necessity for the inward contact to be built, as you well know.
Absolutely. just to go back to the discussion about, you said you're not necessarily from the Pleiades, but from that direction.
Yes.
Recently, a channeling came through from a being that said that they were from the, not the Pleiades, but in that direction.
Okay.
That was, but further away beyond the Pleiades star system. Is that you guys?
Well, we spread far and wide.
Okay.
So at the peak, there were 250 colonies-ish.
Okay.
So there's a lot in the direction of the Pleiades.
I see.
Yes.
Well, the message that came through was that future humanity actually helped them with some technology, with some minerals, not minerals, but some metals or some sort of technology. And it was like far future humanity that they were saying. So it was...
There's a lot of exchange.
Okay.
You know, there's been a lot of help, obviously, given to you since your inception. But as you evolve, you give a lot of help back to a lot of races.
Oh, I see. I see. And not necessarily ones that that we're interacting with now.
Correct.
Future ones that are yet to be discovered.
Yes.
In that sense, it's kind of like Star Trek.
Yes, there are some Star Trek overlays, yes.
But not in the physical sense that we see, you know, third, fourth density reality now. It's going to become more. Is our perception of reality, as it's shifting now, going to shift?
Yes. Perception of reality will shift tremendously away from a rigid, non-fluid, linear time-based reality. And that changes everything.
Is that the fifth dimension then? Is that...
Well, here we go with the density dimension thing.
Things, right.
We don't use the dimension thing.
I see.
We find it confusing for many.
Right.
We use the density thing.
I see.
So our understanding is many people talk about it as the shift to fifth dimension. We call it fourth density.
Fourth density, yeah. That's sort of the, since our last talk to clarifying the densities, I have sort of, for the show, I have sort of a density dimension graph or explanation that I use and I do in panels now.
Excellent.
The way, sort of going by our scientific community, and our scientists measure our reality now as fourth dimension with, you know, spatial up, down, left, right, and then space-time being, as Einstein said, the fourth dimensional component to our fourth dimensional reality. And then the way I understand the fifth dimension would be going outside the linear sense of time.
Yes.
And understanding our reality in a non-linear sense.
Yes, and we would also say the beginnings of holographic understanding.
I see.
Of yourself as the dimension itself.
And once we understand that, then we can jump.
Yes,
timelines jump.
But this is the perception thing again. It's not like you say, today I'm going to jump.
Right.
It's like a fluid way of moving through the energy that is intuitive and organic rather than flipping a lever on a Star Trek panel, you know.
Going through the wormhole.
Exactly.
Creating warp drive.
Exactly. But it's a wonderful way to help the understanding.
I see. So all of these warp drives and these things are just metaphors.
Metaphors.
For more future energetic perception of reality that we just haven't gotten to be able to perceive it that way because of our third density perception.
Yes. So you take steps.
Right.
Little steps, and your understanding increases along the way.
Yeah, which just the past couple of years, my understanding has been blown away. It was just like, whoa, I think, and just when I think I get it, I get a new piece of information.
Well, it is accelerating too.
Yeah, right, yeah, the entire planet and our technology, and I love following the developments in technology, and you know, our scientists just created time crystals, which is literally manipulating time for these particles to be able to sort of it's a new state of matter, so they say, and they're basically going into the quantum, manipulating energy in the quantum and bringing it back, and then now this new state of matter is being able to be produced that's sort of influenced by time in a different way because we're able to program it that way.
Yes. This is a bridge. It's a bridge to quantum consciousness. But right now, the whole idea of spiritual, you could call it spiritual technology or quantum technology, is necessary to help you understand the concepts.
Sure.
But eventually, if you look, for instance, at the Zetas of the future, this is all organic within their consciousness, and they no longer need technology to do it.
And before they did need technology. And the earlier
yes,
Zetas.
Yes.
Okay. And that's, and I sort of see there's different camps. There's the spiritual side, and then I follow both, the technological side with quantum computing and the developments there. That would be more the Zeta, first generation, first Zeta, very intellectual, going into those realms.
And of course, we don't have to say it, but your forefathers have already been down the road of pure technology or pure mentality. It is a dead end. So one of the reasons for a lot of the spiritual work done on your world, even with this type of contact retreat and things such as that, is to help you see there's another road that is not a dead end.
Right.
So you don't have to go down the same road as the Zetas did.
Sure, absolutely. And they sort of came here with that message.
Yes, exactly.
to let us know that.
Exactly.
And eventually, I guess, is that with the nukes and nuclear weapons, is that that's eventually where...
Yes, that's actually a very good analogy,
right,
because that's a dead end too.
Sure. And now we're messing with quantum time crystals, which is a whole nother form of technology that doesn't seem to have the negative ripples that the other technologies have.
It has kind of a safety mechanism built in, so to speak.
Very cool.
Once you go into the quantum, you cannot maintain separation. You cannot maintain egoic desire. So there's only so far you can go into working in the quantum if it's coming from an ego motivation.
I see.
Yes.
The archetypal energy of control mechanisms and separation, they don't work with that sort of technology that much?
It depends on the era.
Okay.
It depends on the specific species, because there's so many.
I see.
But there have been some species who attempted to cling to physicality very tightly, refusing to leave polarity. And when a species does that, their consciousness narrows very dramatically. And to them, it seems like power.
Right.
To those looking, it seems like certain death, certain suicide.
Right.
Because you cannot maintain that separative energy indefinitely.
Right. Eventually it just dissipates into a non-physical, into a nothingness.
Yes.
I wanted to ask about the quarantine. I heard, was lifted in 2012, so to say. There's been different discussions about this, but, I'm using other information that I've gotten and collected, so I may be off here, but it was my understanding that Earth was under a quarantine up until sort of the December 21st, 2012 time, and now this quarantine has been lifted, and now we're able to interact with all these different energies.
Our perspective is different.
Okay.
It's a little bit rebellious.
Okay.
But the idea of quarantine is another kind of one of those Star Trek ideas.
Okay.
In the sense that, well, let's say two things. It's a little bit of a Star Trek idea, but it is also part of an ancient memory from Orion. Within many, many, many of those very dark times in Orion, there was what we've called it in the past an Orion net, all right, which basically kept consciousness locked so it could not explore. That's a whole other, we don't want to go off into that because that's a whole other story. However, on Earth, you bring a lot of those Orion memories, And very often they get translated into spiritual information that we see is a little bit distorted.
I see.
Now, we mean no disrespect, of course, to anyone who's teaching about this, but energetically, in terms of the one consciousness that you are, it's really impossible to quarantine anyone, because you would have to quarantine every single dimension and every single timeline and every single probability, and it doesn't work that way as we see it. However, we sense that the people who were talking about this quarantine idea were reading an energy, but perhaps interpreting it in a slightly distorted way.
I see.
Which is normal, because humans at a certain level of evolution would naturally interpret that the polarized energy, the energy of separation, as a quarantine, as something coming from outside. Okay, but being that all of you are still, whether you're aware of it or not, connected to the one, and you are that one consciousness. No one outside of you can ever do anything to yourself anyway. Now, it may play out like a drama as if
I see.
It's happening, but it isn't really happening. So we're going off. We get kind of excited about this idea.
No, that actually connects to my next question.
All right, then we'll let you go.
Which I had sort of this download maybe it was almost a month ago, prior to the solstice, the full moon, last full moon, of I guess sort of a quarantine situation of more of like putting a fence around a garden and protecting the garden from getting eaten by animals.
Yes.
And then I guess my revelation was, am I protecting the garden? Doesn't the garden have free will to just go and flourish and be what it wants to be? And don't the animals have their free will to come and eat it? And what, am I imposing a free will? But then all this, loop,
Yes.
the paradox.
Yes, the paradox. This is actually one of the biggest paradoxes that humans have to resolve within themselves as you move from third to fourth density, which has to do with, can you control your reality? Can you put a fence around a garden and actually control what happens? The ego wants to believe yes.
Right.
The reality is no, because the ego itself is an illusion. So does that?
Kind of, yeah. It was sort of, by doing so, are we imposing the free will of the universe by putting fences around things? Was there a free will imposement? I don't know if that's a word. But
yes, but we have to say something about free will, because you are hitting a lot of the buttons that we like to talk about.
Okay.
The concept of free will only makes sense from the point of view of egoic consciousness.
I see.
Okay, so from the point of separation, the idea of being controlled or being free is the only realm in which it makes sense. Okay?
I get it.
So, again, this is another thing you're going to evolve out of when people say it's a free will this or that.
Right.
That's an egoic perception. And so that can be kind of confusing for a lot of people. Again, today in class, we drew the big self and the little self.
Exactly.
The little self, because the little self is polarized, understands the idea or believes in the idea of control versus victimization. The big self sees that there is a whole organic process going on, everything happening as it should, despite how the egoic human perceives it. And we mean no disrespect by saying that.
Yeah, humans always have the question about the chicken or egg, which came first.
Exactly, which of course, as you know, is a linear question.
Yes, and it's both. This is the paradox, this is the alchemy, this is and we covered this a lot this weekend. So thank you. Yeah, my first introduction to all of this, which blew my mind, was about abduction scenarios, and I remember having this conversation with Wendy Kennedy, and she said,
to me, it's a soul contract. And that just threw me for a loop. And that was what really got my wheels turning and got me into everything. Because on that level, when you go into that expanded quantum level, the soul signed up for the agreement. So there is no impediment of free will,
Exactly.
et cetera, et cetera.
But the ego cannot tolerate that idea.
It can't, can it? It wants to know what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yes, yes.
I was going to ask about the quantum map, and I saw that diagram actually in the new book that you did some channelings for my buddy Miguel Mendoza.
Ah, yes.
And that was my first time actually seeing the quantum map diagram, which sort of like, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's exactly how if I could draw a diagram of how I see things, it was very, I don't know, I had one of those aha moments.
Well, we do have to give credit where credit is due. We have drawn the childlike version of it with Lyssa's art skills.
Right.
The beautiful version with much more detail was done by Tash Anestos.
Okay.
And it has a lot more information in it even than what we've channeled, but we're happy that you connected with it.
Oh. Since we're in Japan, I did want to bring this up. The idea, and we mentioned this a little bit before with Reiki, the symbols of these, the Reiki symbols, are they cosmic in their origin?
Of course,
everything is
we can't reveal it, yes?
Oh, okay.
But the main symbol that has something to do with a spiral,
yes,
absolutely universal.
Okay.
And as you know, especially for the viewers that might not know, the mountain in Japan, Kurama-san, or Mount Kurama, is where Usui-san channeled the Reiki for the first time, the information in the system. However, the energy of Mount Kurama has had ET contact for millions of years.
I see.
So it's a very, very significant, let's say, pilgrimage spot, especially for energy workers.
Recently, I took a journey there back in September and had a little UFO sighting, so I figured that was...
Oh, yes. It's a big area for UFO sightings, for sure.
Very cool. Going into the symbols and language, some people now, it seems more often than before, are sort of channeling light language, or they're calling it light language.
Yes.
Which is an audible, almost gibberish to the normal person. But could you explain a little bit about what that is, or?
Yes. Well, again, there's two tracks here.
Okay.
Okay. You have those practitioners who are well versed in the light language, and we, of course, our definition might be different than theirs, but we see it as an energy download. That can be expressed into the physical reality in a non-linear way.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So even though there's a language and maybe sometimes people write it,
yes,
or they speak it, it's manifesting in the physical reality in a non-linear way, so that the listener or the reader can connect with it, receive the download. But what they receive goes far beyond linearly reading a book.
I see. Okay.
And often it has lots of codes that unlock at the right time.
Oh, okay.
Now some, taking a totally different tangent, some new channeling students sometimes connect with light language as a way to train their ability to channel. And it's a little less, for some people, it's a little less intimidating than having to bring through information.
Okay.
And it's a good way to train the channel energetically, and sometimes it disappears. And then they are able to channel in their native language. Earth language, that is.
Sure. It's interesting because a friend of mine recently had that experience, channeling for potentially for the first time. Started off in a language what appeared to me, because I had heard light language before, and then sort of turned into an actual physical conversation.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
We've had a lot of channeling students, Lyssa's channeling students, go through a training process using light language as like training wheels on a bicycle.
Interesting.
Not that it's always like that, but for some it is.
And from what I've heard, it tends to sound similar. It's interesting. Maybe it's just the frequency of vibration, but even from different people from different backgrounds still
Yes.
speak this light language that
Yes.
has a very similar feel, tone
Yes.
to it.
Yes. Well, you know, you look at, it's interesting, light language, but the light frequency, or the light spectrum has many frequencies, and sound is one. So sometimes sound can represent a light frequency, and you're going back then before physical beings spoke
I see.
a language, but you're going back to, maybe you might call it primordial sound,
I see.
which is more representative of the universe itself.
So closer to an archetype.
Archetype, exactly.
I see. Does your civilization still use words and sounds like
Yes.
that to talk
When
with?
needed.
When needed.
When
okay.
needed.
But is it mostly telepathic?
Half and half.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe 60-40.
I see. Okay. 60 being talking?
Telepathic.
Oh, telepathic. Okay.
But humans' understanding of telepathic, again, is like
Right.
Star Trek, yes?
You either
You see
do it or
you
don't.
see the aliens sending it,
Yeah.
yes, and then you hear the sound, and it's not like that.
Right.
It's more, perhaps Bashar calls it telepathic.
Telepathic, yes.
It's like a knowledge or a knowingness of the communication that's being given back and forth.
So like another set of information in addition to physicality expressions and facial emotions.
Yes.
It's
Here-
like
A simple example for you. You have maybe a very close partner or spouse, and you know each other so well that sometimes you don't have to speak, and you can communicate almost all day without speaking. But extrapolate that
Right.
to a planet.
Right. So everybody's at that level.
Yes.
I'll read the question, but it's almost
Okay.
it's sort of a repeat of what today I was just saying. Could you look into the future of humanity? Which I'm sure you guys get this question all the time and roll your eyes, and see.
We humor you.
So, and look into like fourth, fifth density humans, and how we might be shepherding other civilizations.
Yes.
As you are shepherding us
Yes.
into these higher frequencies.
Yes.
In humanity's future, who will humans be genetically connected to?
We're curious what your answer is, actually.
My answer is we will find out, I guess. I figure that's what you're going to say. It's like,
Yes.
you can't open our presents for us.
Yes, but also it's not fixed.
Right.
Because it really depends on the trajectory that you take with your evolution.
I see. Which then leads to the question of this, and then this will be the last topic question of the evening, is the individual and the collective choice. I know individually we have the choice to jump into whatever timeline we want to, so to say, but yet on a collective level, humanity is on its own timeline based on its energetic frequency.
Humanity itself is a collective. So even if individuals jump ship, so to speak,
Yeah.
the collective carries on.
Sure.
So it carries on in whatever trajectory the momentum is moving it toward.
I see.
So we don't know if that quite answers.
Well, my understanding of the quantum human collective is that it's infinite in its
Yes.
choices of timelines
Yes.
and directions and
Yes.
everything else.
Yes.
So the individual human, me, for example, having this experience in this human collective reality as it sits right now, I'm only able to have this experience because of the vibration of my individual self is vibrating in conjunction with the human collective experience at this now moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it works?
Well, here's the thing. When humans say the individual self, the question is, are we talking about, you know where we're going with this?
Yes, I
the
do.
small self, which is an
Yes.
illusion?
Right,
Then does the illusion get a choice?
right.
That's the question.
I see.
Ultimately, it is always the big self making the choice.
I see.
The ego does not like that idea.
Right.
But you will eventually learn to not accept it grudgingly, but welcome it. Because that is when you can really surrender into your true nature, and that's where the peace is.
So so myself trying to vibrate at a specific frequency right now so I can have this human experience
It's coming
that's
from
the
here.
ego.
Yes.
That's the ego saying, you know, I want to have this
I want
experience.
this.
I want this, so I'm going to do everything I can to vibrate at this experience. I'm going to om and meditate.
Yes.
And, you know.
You're in a sense getting in your own way.
And then, thank you for clarifying. The individual part of me was like, well, I can make anything happen.
Yes. Old school metaphysics.
Which is the old school metaphysics.
Yes.
I create my reality, which I do, but on a bigger perspective.
On a bigger perspective, who is the one creating reality? It's certainly not the illusionary ego self.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Darn, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, I mean, it's great. It's cool because then now I can release all of that attachment to, I have to, you know, om in at this time and do this
Yes.
and do that. You know,
Yes.
my rigidness of my schedules
Yes.
of trying to be this perfect resonation
Yes.
vibration
Yes.
to have this experience.
It doesn't mean not to do your practice,
No,
but
right.
do your practice with joy, not with rigidity.
Yes, that's perfect. And I think we'll end that. We'll end with that. So thank you
right.
for always coming in and sharing, and for this awesome event again this weekend. And please say hi to, is it Hiyuki?
Ah, your...
My counterpart,
Yes.
if he's around.
Well, you know what we're going to say to that. You can say hello
could
to
say
him
hello.
yourself.
Yes.
In fact, he said hello to you last night.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Oh, when we were out there?
Yes.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. We so enjoy your questions all the time.
Thank you.
Much love to you.